Hello and welcome to Business Innovators Unplugged, where we break down the moves, mindsets, and moments that took them from idea to impact. I'm your host, Anna Magzanyan, president of LA Times Studios. Hello and welcome to Business Innovators Unplugged. I'm your host, Anna Magzanyan. I'm honored about my guest today. He is an icon, an innovator, and a designer's designer. He's Haider Ackermann, the creative director for Tom Ford and Canada Goose. Welcome, Haider.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Congratulations again on being GQ's Fashion Designer of the Year.
There are so many designers, so why am I the one? I don't know, but I just take it as a massive gift giving to me, so I embrace it. And but it's it's just not only for me. It's for all the people who have been walking this road with me, who've been standing by my side. Whether it's my pattern makers, whether it's my assistants, whether it's all the producers of the show, whether it's the models, whether it's the friends, the family, all of them. It's just not only for me.
I want to take us back and let's start at the beginning, Haider. I want to learn about your upbringing. Can you tell me a little bit about your background?
Well, I'm born Colombian, adopted by French parents, with a Korean brother and a Vietnamese sister. And to the whole childhood, we lived in Africa, where we lived in Chad, Ethiopia, Algeria. And then we moved to Holland, and I moved to Belgium. So I had this very nomadic life, strangely not belonging anywhere. So it's a very strange feeling to be in. But it gives you also a sense of freedom, and that's very liberating.
How do you think those global influences shaped yourself and maybe your eye for beauty?
Well, you've been so much. When you are a young child in a foreign country, you are the observer, because at first you don't speak the language. So you're in this cocoon, and therefore it raises your imagination. So I think it's been a big exercise for me to become today what I am, because you're in this very solitude world, observing every gesture, observing every movement of fabric. And I was raised in those African countries. So as a young child, you're surrounded by women. And then you saw all the chadors and all those women raped in the veils. And I didn't know what the designer meant, but I knew that I was attracted by any gestures and every movement. And perhaps the fact that those women were hidden, this whole mystery I wanted to understand, even though I will never completely understand women, but I think that's the beauty about it. So yeah, it just provoked a lot of desire in me.
You said you were untamed in fashion school and even got kicked out of Antwerp's Royal Academy. How did you rebound from that experience?
Well, when you grew up in Africa, you have this wild life. So perhaps I was too wild, I was too restless, I was impatient, I was not following the perfect rules. I didn't thought that I had to be at school when I had nothing to say. I didn't want to bother my teachers. But so I was not a very disciplined person, but very disciplined in my dreams, very disciplined in my world, my own little world. So yeah, you kicked out, your dreams fall apart, but at least it gives you also kind of strength. It reinforced me. So there's no regret there. I think my path, it was meant to be like this.
Did you dream when you were a child that you would be a designer, or
I wanted to be Pope.
you wanted to be Pope?
Yes, so it has nothing to do with it.
Wow. That's incredible.
That's another story.
No, that's another story for another time. I want to talk a little bit about recognition and mentorship. In 2010, Karl Lagerfeld said you could be his successor at Chanel. What was it like hearing that from someone you admired so deeply? What did that statement mean to you?
It actually came out of nowhere. Strangely, so Mr. Lagerfeld and I were very close. And And strangely, I never touched the subject with him. I didn't even dare to ask him why he said this. But in my opinion, it was not, he didn't mean seriously. He just wanted people to look at me. He just wanted to have the light shine on me. That was a way of him to say, please look at this guy. And for me, a way also to stand straight, to take myself seriously, to put my doubt and my anxieties and my insecurities aside and thinking like, if Miss Lagerfeld says this, so now you better go for it and you better work and do it.
And do him proud.
And do him proud.
That's
Exactly,
amazing.
exactly. But coming from such a man, which I really highly respected and admired, it just, that's not a gift of life.
I mean, he too was an icon. And
Oh, he was certainly an iconic person, I guess.
your good friend, Tilda Swinton, once described you in a quote, proper romantic and a proper punk, ancient and supersonic at the same time. Is that how you describe yourself?
Oh my God, she's so good with words. I could never see myself this way. Yes, there is something very nostalgic and melancholic in me, but at the same time, I like to embrace the future. So I think there's this clash between the past and the future. I think that for many designers or many artists, it's, yeah, but yeah.
Like recognizing the past, but then embracing it as
Embracing the future, because of course we have to make, as a study of design, you have to make collections of the actuals, which are nowadays, which resonate with we're living, and at the same time looking ahead to be present and actual. Yeah. So I don't know. Yes, she said it very well.
She did say it very well. I want to talk a little bit about, the past and the present. Do you remember the first time you met Tom Ford?
Yes, I remember the first time I met Mr. Tom Ford. Yes, I don't know. I haven't told him. I haven't told him the first time I met him. It was at a party. I was interning at John Galliano, and John threw a party. Mr. Tom Ford was there, and he was standing so straight, so controlled. And you were drawn by it. You were drawn by this imposing person, very seductive. So I just observed him from the corner of my eyes. That's the first time I saw him. I didn't speak a word. I was too shy.
You were too shy. But the first time when you guys met and you spoke, what was it like? Because you both have such distinct visions. What was that moment like?
Well, I knew that Mr. Ford always respected my work. I mean, we've been flirting with each other in a very professional way. I knew that he had already mentioned in the press how much he respects or like my work, and I was looking up to him. So we knew there was this dance around us, which was really beautiful. And then finally, the moment we really met, it was something very. It made sense. I don't know how to explain it. It was just like, okay, we know.
Well, you don't have to explain it. We are now here. You're leading the creative direction at Tom Ford, redefining a brand that is so synonymous of its founder, right? The name is Tom Ford. Like, I love to understand from you, how do you approach that challenge?
Well, it is very strange because, of course, as you said, it's about Mr. Ford. He's the face, the ambassador. I mean, it's all about him. So how do you continue from there on? Not an easy task, but a very challenging one. And I think that the thing which unites us both is we are seduced by the same thing. We are searching for the same desire. I think seduction and desire are very big, high words on our list, on our dictionary. So we like the same music. We like the same aesthetics. We are not strangers to each other. We might take it very differently. We might translate it very differently. He might be more sexual. I might be more sensual. I think we're living also very different periods. We talked back in the days very much about the power of a woman, which I think is very different nowadays. I see women very differently in that sense that they have the power inside of themselves. They don't need to show it by clothes or by a certain attitude. It resonates in them. So it's not up to us to. So the power dressing is very different.
Oh, I love that. I want to talk, you said sensual, and To be honest, when I look at your Instagram account, that's the feeling I get. I feel like it was so highly curated. I feel like I'm in a museum. Can you tell me a little bit about your relationship with social media?
Oh, it's a very complicated one. It's a very complicated one. In a world that is so loud and everybody's screaming for attention, um, it's a power, but I sometimes don't share everything because I prefer the silence. I prefer my discretion. I don't need everyone to know what I'm doing or what I'm liking. I don't think it's fascinating or interesting, but so it's a complicated, yeah. But I do love to post sometimes stories. I do love to share a few things because I thought that's part of my job as well. There's a joy to it at the same time. I mean, we're living in a world where everybody screams for attention. So how do you resonate with that? How do you take your distance and how do you remain discreet at the same time?
You attended the Met Gala.
Oh, good Lord.
And you wrote on your Instagram that day that you had to express this immense feeling that you felt that moment. If you could share a little bit about what that meant for you.
Well, you're suddenly in front of Madonna. We all know her songs by heart. We all know Madonna. It's very strange. When I was working with her and dressing her, she showed immediately kind of fragility and a vulnerability. And that put everything on the floor. It's like, okay, let's work now because you're showing a part of you. And, she's not 20 or 30 anymore. It's a woman, so the body is different, everything is different, and to approach it's very different than the image that you have, the iconic image that you have from her. So I was working all the way around, and then finally it's the Met Gala, and then suddenly I'm sitting in a car with her, and you really look and you're like, I'm with Madonna. Excuse my language, but it's just like so impressive because she's been such a, she defines culture. She's been such an advocate for so many human causes, whether you talk about the gay community or any kind of community. She was in Moscow putting Pussy Riots on her concert. I mean, she really defines politicians. She really went for what she believed in without being scared of any consequence it would do.
Her
She was
presence is
fearless.
power.
Yes. And for her she liberated so many things. I think it's absolutely very, very impressive. So that moment that I was sitting next to her and I realized all this and take it in, I was like, oh my God, I'm with Madonna.
I want to talk about inspiration for creativity. You had said that your creativity shifted from a darker place to a more optimistic one. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, when you're young, you're probably more tormented. You're trying to find your way. You're going all kind of direction and you lose yourself into it, which has a beauty to it. There's something very romantic about losing yourself. But perhaps now I'm more mature. I'm staying more straight in my shoes and I know the road I'm going to take. So I'm more defined. So the light might be brighter, but I love the past. I mean, as a designer, you can only create who you are, what your experience has been, what you've seen, what your eyes observed. So all those little steps on the way lead me where I am today, which is a beautiful, healthy place.
I'd love to know, what is your vision for the brand's future?
To continue this path. I mean, I don't think that I have a vision. If any woman or man will feel loved in the clothes of Mr. Ford, of the Bantram Ford, then I succeed with my work. And there's not a vision to it. It's just trying to make people feel good, trying to make people feeling straight, standing straight. The world is complicated at the moment. If by the moment a woman or a man can feel very beautiful in clothes, or that it adds to beauty in a certain way, in a kind of love, because we talk about emotions, even though it's about clothes, it's very emotional. I mean, every garment that I have for the past 20 years, because I was at this concert with this person, because I kissed that one. So it's all related. So it's a very emotional process. So if I just can continue to do my work and people feel this, then that might be my vision that I would like to.
What do you think the role of fashion is today, especially in the luxury space, and what responsibility do you feel as a designer in shaping that conversation?
Luxury is a big word. It's everybody talk about luxury, but what is luxury? Time is luxury. Taking care of yourself, looking at yourself is luxury. Are clothes luxury? I don't know. I don't know anymore. Nowadays, everything is so. Desire is luxury. Longing for something is luxury. I think we live in a world where you can get everything the next second, the next minute. You kill all desires, you kill the longing. But that's for me luxury. Just dreaming to desire to have that piece of clothes or that painting. And you can't have it immediately. But that road, those moments are very, very beautiful. And they're perhaps better than just owning that piece. That dream, that fantasy.
I love that. The journey to get there.
Exactly, the journey to get there.
Many emerging designers look at you as inspiration or for inspiration. What's the one piece of advice you would offer to a younger designer today that's trying to find their own voice or their own journey?
There's this beautiful sentence from Yoko Ono, which says, "Dream your dream alone, it's only a dream. Dream your dream together, it's reality." You as a designer need to have a very strong team next to you. You are nowhere without a good team. So this is building a community. This is also acknowledge all your friendships, because there are moments that you will not believe in yourself and your friends will be there. So always surround and protect yourself. Follow your dreams. At the same time, be anchored in reality and have a good lawyer. Because that's important at the end of the day. So yes, follow your dreams, but be anchored in reality and just protect yourself.
Haider, when you travel, what are the 3 or 4 things you do not leave home without?
My partner. That's the only thing that's needed. When I travel, I like the silence. I like to lose myself in nature. I like to breathe. I like to go very far, because the moment you're so far away from, physically, when you're so far away from home, you're also the most closest to yourself, because then you have the time to ask yourself the right questions. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? So I don't take much. I just don't need much. I just like the silence and the air and the person I'm in love with to be somewhere not far.
I've heard you like to go camping.
Yes, I do. I do.
What do you love about it?
You just need the basic. You don't need much. Certainly the world that I'm living, where you're always surrounded by so many people, you have so many things around you, and you just need yourself. And that's the most important, and also when you go camping, and certainly with your loved one, you learn to understand each other. You learn to navigate with each other. It's a very good exercise for if you first fall in love with a person. Go camping, then you know if you can make this relationship or not.
Unless there's a 4 seasons, I'm not going camping. I can't do the hurrah on the floor. I mean, I have very curly hair. It could go real bad real fast. That loved one might be far, far away on a trip of his own. Sorry, I had to go there. Well, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Check out more episodes of Business Innovators Unplugged wherever you get your podcasts.